God. They really don't understand the various names and attributes of God. For it is his names and the attributes that denotes who he is. You know, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord our provider. Names of God, Elohim, El Shaddai. Names of God, Yahweh. Names of God, Adonai. The names of God depicts who God is. He's all powerful. Yes, his name describes who God is. And oftentimes we get caught up in our own self-sufficiency, and we forget that it's not our self-sufficiency, but it is the empowerment of God that empowers us to be who we are and what we are. Sometimes we get caught up. We get caught up in not trusting the process. We get caught up in not trusting that God has our back. And this story that we shall unravel this morning is a man who really didn't trust God. Despite of evidence that he had to rely upon, that God was sovereign. And when we talk about the sovereignty of God, we're referring to that God is completely in charge. Even though it does not look like it sometime in human affairs, it looks like everything is just going all kinds of way. God is in charge. That's why we must relax. We must step back. We must cross our legs and say, God, it's in your hand. And when we trust God, God comes out always a winner because he has already won. The names of God. To understand how God operates, one must also understand the attributes of God. And this morning, I just want to look on 3 of these attributes before I really probe into this story, because if Jonah would have considered the names of God and the attributes of God, perhaps he would not have ran from God. If you consider the names of God and the attributes of God, or the essence of God, perhaps you'll take another look. And perhaps you will do, as the scripture says, be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and supplication, make your request known unto God. Why? Because our God, he shall supply all our needs according to his riches in glory. 3 attributes that I want you to know about God. And if you understand these attributes, you'll be able to recognize no matter what comes in your timeline, whatever been assigned to you, if you recognize the attributes of God and accept him for who he is, you won't have to run from God. You run to God. And that's the whole objective of this sermon this morning, is stop running from God and run to God, because God can handle it. The first attribute of God is that our God is he's omnipotent. We are finite beings, but God is infinite. He is infinite. We are finite beings. We have our own limitations. We are limited to time, space, and matter. But God is infinite. In order to describe what we mean by infinite, where God is from everlasting to everlasting. There is no beginning or end with God. God is infinite. He's so infinite because God exists because God exists. The finite cognitive region cannot understand that or process that, but God exists because he exists. I can't explain it, but God exists because he exists. He chooses to exist, and therefore if he's God, he's infinite. Not only is he infinite, but our God is he is self-sufficient. Whatever God needs to exist within his ability to be infinite, he finds it within himself. Whatever God, he's self-sufficient because he's self-contained. Whatever God needs, he don't have to depend on any external forces for him to be the infinite God, to exist. He's self-contained. Therefore, he don't have to rely upon our responses. You don't have to rely upon our responses. God is self-sufficient. And then our God is a God that is immutable. He's a God that cannot change. His very nature, he's predictable. He said, I want you to know God is predictable. There are some of you who aren't predictable, but God is predictable. He's really predictable. And if Jonah would consider the names of God and the attributes of God, those three at least, perhaps he would not have ran from God. He would ran to God. You can't run from God because God is everywhere all the time. If you run to the mountains, you find him there. If you run to the valley, you find